They stayed in my house for weeks after Thanksgiving. Said it was temporary, just until the Christmas trip. Left dishes in the sink, turned my guest room into a storage unit, and never once asked if I was okay with it. I tiptoed around my own kitchen while they blasted music, took over the living room, and acted like I was the one intruding. Then one morning, I woke up to find a group text. Flights booked, resort confirmed. No mention of me, not even a, "Hey, do you want to come?" Just silence. A silence so loud it echoed through every inch of this house they'd been treating like their own. I spent Christmas Eve alone, candles lit, food I barely touched, and a quiet so heavy it felt like punishment. I saw their photos online, red plaid pajamas, hot cocoa cheers, captioned, "Family first, always." I wasn't angry, not yet. That came later, when they returned, furious that I'd changed the locks. Called me selfish, said I had ruined the family spirit. One of them even asked, "How could you do this to us?" I looked them in the eye and said nothing, because if I spoke, I might never stop. They locked me out emotionally, so I locked the door. And if they think that's selfish, well, here's what really happened. Hi, I'm Rachel. I've never been the dramatic one. I used to tell myself I could endure anything as long as I kept the peace. But this year, something shifted. If you've ever been treated like background in your own life, like a convenience until you say no, I want to tell you my story. Not for sympathy, but because it's time I said it out loud. Chapter 1. Just a few weeks, honey. It started with a phone call over lukewarm coffee and a half-finished spreadsheet. My mother's voice, unusually gentle, filtered through the receiver like a memory wrapped in flannel. We were thinking, just for a little while, sweetheart. A few weeks, tops. You know, while the pipes get fixed and, well, it's been so quiet without your father. I hesitated, but not for long. My father had left the house to me in his will, a modest two-story craftsman tucked behind an overgrown hedge in the quieter side of town. I'd kept it mostly how he left it. Framed sketches still hung by the kitchen window, and the creaky stair that always caught him off guard still groaned at midnight like clockwork. I wasn't lonely, but I wasn't surrounded either. So I said yes. Tyler, my younger brother, pulled up the next morning in a car that smelled like fast food and borrowed ambition. His wife, Lindsay, followed behind, juggling plants in ceramic pots and a yoga mat still dusted with grass. My mother arrived last, arms full of pillows and a "home is where the heart is" sign she wasted no time hanging by the front door. I told myself it was temporary. Everyone did. The first few days were fine. We ate takeout on the porch. Tyler helped trim the hedge. Lindsay offered to reorganize the pantry and left it looking like a Pinterest board. There were little laughs, little reconnections. I almost believed it might be good for us. Then came the small shifts. My kettle went missing, replaced by a sleek glass one Lindsay ordered just to match the backsplash. My reading chair was moved to the garage to open up the flow. Tyler painted over the faded navy wall in the dining room. No one asked. They just did. Mom started waking earlier than me, making her signature cinnamon coffee that somehow always left my French press sticky and misaligned. She suggested I switch to almond milk for my joints. She opened my windows without asking, rearranged the spice drawer, and once told me my bath mat smelled lonely. I didn't even know a bath mat could smell like anything. Still, I said nothing. I told myself they were trying to help, that maybe this was the cost of togetherness. Compromise, noise, a little disarray. After all, hadn't I once longed for this? A home not echoing in silence? But then came the whisper. It was a Thursday night. I came home early from work. My key clicked in the door quieter than usual, and their voices drifted from the kitchen. Too casual, too comfortable. I mean, if we're going to stay longer, we should probably help repaint the hallway too, Lindsay said. I froze just inside the foyer. My mother's voice was low, but not cautious. She won't mind. She likes to keep herself busy, and it's not like she's doing anything with the space. There was a clink of glasses. Laughter. Then Tyler's voice. We'll bring it up next week. Let her feel like it's her idea. I stood there, fingers tightening around the keys still in my hand. Something sharp and invisible shifted in my chest. Not pain, exactly. Not yet. But the familiar sting of something sacred being rewritten without my name on it. Just a few weeks, honey. That's what she said. But now, I wasn't so sure if they ever planned to leave. Chapter 2. Maybe it's best you stay home and focus on work. It was the photo that did it. Just a casual scroll on Tyler's iPad left on the kitchen counter, the screen still lit. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I'd gone in for a glass of water, noticed the light, and tapped it out of instinct. One swipe revealed a group chat, Tahoe Fam 2023. The preview showed a picture of a rental cabin, decked out in twinkling lights, and a snow-drenched balcony overlooking a frozen lake. I blinked. Another swipe opened the full thread. There were messages from Lindsay. I called dibs on the upstairs master. Tyler had responded with a gif of someone doing snow angels. Mom had added a note about bringing her special cinnamon bread. Everyone was so excited, like it was some long-awaited tradition, except I wasn't in the chat. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't invited. A sick wave moved through my chest. I scrolled again, slower this time, hoping, no, praying, I'd just missed something. That there was a message somewhere that said, let's loop Sam in later, or ask Samantha what dates work. But no, it was like I didn't exist. I sat down on the edge of the sofa, phone still in hand, heart thudding. My breath came out shaky. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't needy. But this wasn't forgetfulness. It was exclusion, deliberate and quiet, like a door closing behind your back. That evening, I waited until dinner to say something. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and garlic. Mom stirred soup while Lindsay folded napkins into unnecessary origami shapes. Tyler poured himself a glass of wine and one for Mom. None for me. I cleared my throat. So, Tahoe, huh? Lindsay froze mid-fold. Tyler looked up, confused for a second too long. Mom's ladle clattered slightly against the pot. Oh, sweetheart, she said quickly, recovering. We didn't think you'd want to come. With work and all. I own my schedule, I replied. You know that. Well, she continued, smoothing the edge of her apron like it might smooth the tension. You've seemed preoccupied lately. We just thought it might be stressful for you. I'm not the one who planned a secret trip. Don't make this into something it's not. Tyler jumped in, defensive. It's just a getaway. I turned to Lindsay. And you didn't think I'd enjoy snow too? She raised her eyebrows, then shrugged. You're not really the group type. Mom stepped in again, her voice overly calm. Maybe it's best you stay home and focus on work. You always say you're behind. Behind, like I was dragging them down. Like I was the burden in a family photo they wanted to crop. The rest of dinner passed in clipped phrases and forced chewing. My appetite vanished somewhere between denial and resentment. I cleaned the dishes alone, trying to scrub the sting off the plates. Later that night, as I walked past the guest room, I heard a whisper. The kind you're not meant to hear, but do anyway. Did you bring the papers? Lindsay's voice. A rustle. I did, Mom whispered. But she's been touchy. Maybe wait until next week. I slowed my steps, heart pounding. She'll be fine, Lindsay said, her voice syrupy. Just have her sign it when she's distracted. It's better this way. Trust me. I kept walking, slowly, deliberately, into my room, into the silence. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at nothing. Something was happening, something bigger than a trip or an oversight. And for the first time in weeks, I saw the house for what it was. Mine, yes, but also surrounded by people who were pretending I wasn't really there. Chapter 3. We're just using the kitchen to warm up the appetizers. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. My work meeting had been canceled last minute, and I figured I'd use the free afternoon to finally start the garden cleanup I'd been putting off. I pulled into the driveway just as a shiny SUV backed out. Strange. We weren't expecting guests. At least I wasn't. As I stepped inside, the scent hit me first. Rosemary again, but this time mingled with nutmeg and something citrusy. Then came the laughter. Loud, cheerful, familiar in all the wrong ways. My living room was packed. Balloons, streamers, wine glasses, music humming softly in the background. People stood around like it was their home. "What is this?" I asked aloud, but no one noticed. Lindsay breezed past me holding a tray of shrimp cocktail. "Oh, Sam, you're early." "I live here," I said, but it barely registered with her. "We're just using the kitchen to warm up the appetizers. No big deal." I glanced around. The dark green velvet tablecloth I'd chosen last year was gone, replaced with a bright red plaid monstrosity. My holiday centerpiece, meticulously handmade with pine cones and eucalyptus, had been shoved aside in favor of something store-bought and glittery. Even the framed photos on the sideboard had been rearranged. My father's picture, the one I always kept near the dining room light, was missing. I followed the sound of laughter into the den, only to stop cold. Someone, one of Lindsay's friends I presumed, was sitting in my office chair using my laptop. My open laptop. She was clicking through photos of the cabin in Tahoe, showing it off like she had booked it herself. "Oh my God," she giggled. "Lindsay said the master bathroom has heated floors. I cannot wait." I stepped in. "Excuse me, that's my laptop." She blinked at me, confused for a second, before standing up awkwardly. "Sorry, I thought this was just, like, the family room? It's my home office." Lindsay appeared behind me. "She's just showing off the trip. Don't be so tense, Sam, it's not that deep." I turned to my mother, who was setting down a tray of mini quiches. "Mom, did anyone think to ask me?" She smiled like I was a toddler mid-tantrum. "Oh, honey, it's just a small send-off before we head out. Everyone's been so excited, I thought it'd be nice to celebrate." "I wasn't invited." She looked past me. "Well, you've been moody. And with everything going on, we didn't want to make it awkward." Awkward. In my own home. I retreated to the hallway, needing air, needing space. But there was none. This house, my house, felt suddenly porous. Taken. And then I heard it. Through the slightly ajar laundry room door. "I just think," Tyler's voice, low and casual, "after this trip, it's time to really talk about the house. It's not fitting for Sam anymore. You know?" A pause. Then Lindsay's voice. "Yeah. She's out of sync here. We'd make better use of the space. You could have your own yoga room, remember?" A longer pause. Then Mom's voice, soft but firm. "I've been thinking the same." My breath caught. For a moment, the walls around me felt like they were tilting. I backed away before they could hear me, quietly returning to my room, my supposed sanctuary. Later that night, I sat on my bed in silence. The echo of their laughter still rang faintly down the hall, but beneath it, I heard something louder, clearer. The beginning of a plan. Not mine. Theirs. A plan that didn't include me. A plan that wanted me gone. And something inside me clicked. Not rage, not sadness. Something colder. Steadier. I wasn't going to beg for space in the house I inherited, but I was going to watch, listen, and make sure they'd regret ever thinking it was theirs to take. Chapter 4. I didn't change the locks out of spite. I changed them for peace. The house was still when I came home from work. For the first time in weeks, no shoes littered the front hallway, no half-drunk coffee cups on the counter, no scent of Lindsay's overpowering lavender candle fighting for dominance in my living room. Just silence. Honest, undisturbed silence. It was the perfect time. The locksmith showed up right on schedule. I'd chosen someone discreet, a man in his 60s with more tools than words. He didn't ask why I was changing every single lock on every single door. Just nodded, got to work, and handed me a new ring of keys an hour later. Clean slate. I left a letter taped to the inside of the front door. It was short, almost gentle. I'm not evicting anyone, but this is my home. I need it to feel safe again. You have 30 days to make other arrangements. Samantha. They weren't due back from their Christmas trip until Sunday. That gave me a few days to breathe, to mentally fortify. I made tea, lit the candle my father used to keep by his favorite chair, and for the first time since they moved in, slept with both eyes closed. The first call came at 6:12 a.m. Sunday. Mom's voice was cracked, trembling with righteous pain. "How could you do this to me, Sam?" "To your mother? I had to climb through a window at my age. Do you understand what you've done?" I closed my eyes. "You weren't supposed to come back until this evening. You changed the locks like a criminal, like a stranger." I left a letter. It was respectful. Then came Tyler. "That was cold, Sam. Even for you. You blindsided us. You're punishing Mom for loving you." She lied to me. "Stop playing the victim. We were just trying to make this house feel like a home again." "For whom?" I asked, but he'd already hung up. The texts were relentless. Lindsay's Facebook post was the worst. A black and white photo of Mom from 2 Christmases ago, when Dad was still alive. The caption read, "Some people forget what family means when money and walls matter more." My heart aches for mothers who are betrayed by their own blood. 1,000 likes. Dozens of comments filled with fire emojis and sad faces. One mutual friend wrote, "If that were my daughter, I'd be ashamed." I didn't comment. I didn't defend. But I felt it. In the checkout line at the store. In the way a neighbor crossed the street instead of saying hello. In the empty inbox from friends who used to check in on Tuesdays. At work, I couldn't concentrate. My manager gently asked if I needed some time off. I didn't, but I nodded anyway. Better to lie than explain the weight of being cast as a villain in your own home. That night, after making it through my emails with nothing but a bowl of cereal and the hum of the fridge for company, I found something in the mailbox. No return address, no markings, just a plain envelope. Inside, a single note, printed in neat block letters. This was their plan from the beginning. You were never the destination, just a stop along the way. I read it 3 times. My pulse kicked. I scanned for a signature, a name, a hint. Nothing. But suddenly, all the pieces began to shift in my mind. The whispers I overheard, the odd glances, Lindsay's constant hovering around my mother, the mention of signatures. Week after next. A plan to make this house feel more like theirs. It wasn't just family overstaying their welcome. It was a quiet siege, and I was the last line of defense. Chapter 5. I did this because I deserve to live fully in my own home. The silence of the house had shifted. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was charged, heavy, like something was pressing against the walls, waiting to get in. Or maybe it already had. I started moving differently. I no longer just passed through the rooms. I studied them, every drawer, every shelf. I kept my phone on me at all times, camera ready. I began photographing things that had been moved, things I hadn't touched, like the frame with Dad's picture that ended up turned backward one morning, or the odd stack of unpaid utilities tucked behind a flower vase that hadn't been there the day before. I wasn't being paranoid. I was collecting facts. But something deeper pulled at me. Why did I let this happen for so long? Why did it take so much to push me to act? So I sat down, opened an old notebook, and let memory take over. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to step aside for the sake of peace. Years ago, I canceled a long-awaited trip to the coast because Mom needed someone to take her to physical therapy after her knee surgery. Tyler had work stuff. Lindsay was too new to the family. So I did it. No thanks, no recognition, just a quiet expectation that I would always be available. Then there was the tuition. Tyler got into an out-of-state program. Mom and Dad couldn't cover all of it. I wired part of my savings without fanfare. I was even careful to label the transfer as gift education. At his graduation, his thank you speech listed off friends, mentors, even his dog. Not one word about me. I hadn't wanted a spotlight. I just wanted to matter. I flipped open the folder I kept locked in my bedroom drawer. The house deed, the one Dad gave me after he was diagnosed. I reread the part he underlined. Sole beneficiary, Samantha E. Holloway. His handwriting still lived on the margins, little notes about repairs, future upgrades he hoped I'd do. Paint the porch navy like she wanted. Replace kitchen tiles. Ask Sam which ones she likes. I remembered crying the first time I read those. Now I read with dry eyes and a clenched jaw. Next to the deed, I found something else. Papers I hadn't paid attention to before. A printed draft of a document titled Temporary Power of Attorney. I flipped through it, stomach sinking. There were sections already filled out, signatures missing, but one line caught me cold. This document affirms that the homeowner, Samantha Holloway, is presently unable to manage her affairs due to mental distress. There it was, a clear strategy, not just to pressure me, but to erase me, frame me as unstable, get my consent under duress or confusion. And Lindsay, her constant remarks about my anxiety or overreaction, now made a chilling kind of sense. I started compiling everything: emails, timestamps, voicemails, photos of the house changes, receipts for purchases I hadn't authorized, even screenshots of Lindsay's public posts. I printed old journal entries, noting dates when I'd been left out, manipulated, used. I backed up my laptop and changed all my passwords. Twice. That was when I noticed something odd in my emails sent folder. An email to a client I'd been courting for 6 months. The subject line was aggressive: unreasonable demands, contract terminated. My chest tightened. I hadn't sent that. The body of the email was curt, cold, and entirely unlike my voice, but it was sent from my account at 1:42 a.m. 2 nights ago. The client hadn't replied. When I called, their assistant told me gently, "We're choosing to move in another direction." I sat down hard. Someone had accessed my work email, sabotaged me. I scanned my memory, trying to remember when my laptop had been left unattended, at the party. Of course, Lindsay had been sitting at my desk, laughing over old photos, claiming she just wanted to check something. I stared at the screen, my reflection distorted in the dark glass. They weren't just trying to push me out of my home. They were trying to erase me, professionally and personally. And now I finally saw it clearly. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being hunted. Chapter 6. She's not stable anymore, Mom. It's time we do something. It started with a flicker. My portfolio site suddenly taking longer to load. Then a client emailed to ask why their dashboard design now looked like a college project done in the dark. I logged in and froze. The file I'd refined for weeks had been overwritten with an older version. Clunky fonts, broken grids, mismatched colors. It was a disaster. I checked the version history. Someone had accessed it remotely. Not once. Repeatedly. I knew who had the password. Tyler. Months ago, I helped him build a mock presentation for his side hustle. He had access to my system, and clearly he hadn't let it go to waste. Then came the email from another client, a passive-aggressive follow-up about miscommunications and tone. When I opened the sent message thread, my name was there, my email signature in place, but I hadn't written those words. It sounded like someone impersonating me, trying too hard to sound sharp and in control. Lindsay's style of control. I had backups, of course, but the damage wasn't just technical. It was reputational. They weren't just making me seem sloppy. They were making me look unstable. And that was exactly the word I found in a printed report slid under my front door 3 days later. The subject has a documented history of depressive episodes, emotional volatility, and self-isolation. We recommend further evaluation to determine decision-making capacity. No name, no sender. But I recognized the phrasing. I'd seen it in the mouths of family members over the years. You're too emotional. You overreact. Why are you being so dramatic? And now, she's not well. I later learned, thanks to a friend who worked as a paralegal in a neighboring firm, that my mother had met with an estate attorney 3 times in the past 2 weeks. At the last meeting, she brought a typed summary of my emotional instability and requested guidance on initiating temporary guardianship over my estate. In her version of events, I had become erratic, unsafe, and potentially harmful to both myself and others. She cited a bout of depression from 6 years ago, something I had overcome with therapy and grit, and painted it as chronic instability. She claimed I'd been detaining her and Tyler against their will by changing the locks. She called it gating off family support. I called it reclaiming my space. But then Tyler did something that nearly sent me over the edge. He spoke to our neighbors. Word got around. Whispers that I had flipped, that I had locked my elderly mother out in the cold. Someone even posted in a local Facebook group asking if anyone had seen signs of erratic behavior from me and if the community should intervene. My inbox, once full of requests and feedback from clients, now carried subject lines like, "Are you okay?" and "Can we reschedule?" And then, silence. They were choking my work, undermining my competence, and worst of all, they were laying the groundwork to legally remove me from my own life. I would have doubted my own memory if not for the file my friend Grace forwarded to me. Her message was short. Just, "Your name came up. Call me." The attachment was a scanned internal request from a family law group. Samantha E. Holloway, recommendation for compulsory psychiatric evaluation. Requested by family representatives. Basis, concern for mental competency, asset management irregularities. I stared at it for a long time. There was no meltdown, no screaming, no slamming of doors or accusations, just silence. A quiet decision being formed, moment by moment, breath by breath. They were preparing a war they thought I wouldn't survive. But they had forgotten one thing. You don't corner a woman like me and expect her to fold. You watch her fold her sleeves. Chapter 7. If they want war, I won't fight with tears. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't post a long-winded call for sympathy on social media. I simply sat at my kitchen table, alone, quiet, methodical, and opened my laptop. If they wanted war, I wasn't going to bring feelings. I was going to bring facts. The first thing I did was check the security footage. My house had a modest but well-placed set of cameras, most of which had been installed when I started working remotely full-time. I'd never thought I'd need them for anything more than deterring package thieves. But now, I needed answers. And there she was. Lindsay. 2 days before their vacation, while I was at a client meeting, she had entered my home with a spare key and walked straight into my study. The footage showed her rifling through my desk drawers, pausing over a locked folder before taking out her phone and snapping multiple pictures. She wasn't frantic. She wasn't rushed. She knew what she was looking for. I pulled the timestamp, backed up the footage, and uploaded it to a separate drive with encryption. My heart pounded, but my hands didn't shake. This was no longer a family disagreement. This was calculated violation. Next, I checked the server logs of my project dashboard. Thankfully, I'd installed a plugin that tracked login activity months ago after a scare with ransomware. There it was. Multiple logins from an IP address I didn't recognize at first. But when I cross-checked with an old email thread from a time I helped Tyler troubleshoot his modem, I found the match. His network, his device, the fake emails, the sabotaged files. It was all pointing in the same direction. I printed the logs. I printed everything. Then I began sorting through old paperwork. I dug through boxes in the closet, drawers I hadn't opened in months. I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for documentation. I found 2 versions of a draft letter. One from my father's original will stating the house was mine, and another more recent letter from a law firm downtown requesting temporary power of attorney to be granted to Marcia Holloway in light of her daughter's deteriorating mental capacity. The language was veiled, but the intent was crystal clear. I scanned everything. Created folders labeled by timeline, category, and source. No confrontation. No family texts. No teary voice messages. I wasn't going to plead for decency anymore. I was going to demand accountability. By the end of the week, I had retained a lawyer of my own. Not someone my family knew. Not someone from town. A recommendation from a distant friend. An estate and property attorney based in Portland. She didn't blink when I told her everything. She just said, "Good. You're documenting. Keep doing that." While the legal groundwork was being prepared, I started writing. Not public posts, not accusations, letters. Handwritten, deliberate, honest letters. To my Aunt May, my cousin Julia, even Uncle Ron, people who had always hovered in the periphery, never fully choosing sides, never fully informed. I didn't ask them to believe me. I just asked them to read. I included copies of the login logs, timestamps from the security footage, and screenshots of the fake emails. I said nothing bad about my family. No insults, no bitterness. Just the truth. On paper. I mailed them one by one. No fanfare. A few days later, I got a call from Aunt May. She sounded tired, unsure of her own voice. She said, "Sweetheart, I don't know what's happening over there. But I have to say, this is the first time I think your mother is really being forced to see herself, and I don't think she's ready for the reflection." For the first time in weeks, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone. I was just done being ruined in silence. Chapter 8. I sent them a copy. And a mirror. I didn't warn them. I didn't write a dramatic post or give them one last chance to make it right. I'd spent a lifetime offering grace in advance, and it had gotten me gaslit, manipulated, and nearly erased. So this time, I didn't offer a warning. I offered a reckoning. The civil suit was filed on a Wednesday morning, quietly and thoroughly. 3 charges: defamation, fraudulent impersonation causing business harm, and attempted asset seizure through psychological manipulation. My attorney called it a beautifully surgical document. I called it overdue. No cover letters, no handwritten notes. Each person, my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, received a packet via certified mail. Inside, a copy of the court filing, timestamps from my home security footage showing Lindsay going through my drawers, and screenshots of the fake emails tied to Tyler's IP address. No threats. Just the evidence, laid out in cool, unflinching order. To the rest of the family, I sent something else. An email. Subject line, "For your awareness. No action required." Inside, I told them what had happened, not from a place of rage, but clarity. And attached was the audio recording from the conversation between my mother and her lawyer. I'd obtained it through a discovery loophole once the lawyer's name appeared in the estate documents. In it, Marcia laughed lightly and said, "That girl will unravel herself. We just have to wait. She's always been unstable." When I hit send, my hands didn't tremble. They felt steady. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't pleading. I was just reporting the truth. What followed wasn't noise. It was silence. The same silence I'd heard when I sat alone at family dinners. The same silence that echoed when my name was left off wedding invitations and group messages. Only now, it wasn't directed at me. It hovered around them. Aunt Lydia didn't respond at all. Uncle Ron replied with one line, "I had no idea. I'm sorry." My cousin Ellie, who used to post photos with Lindsay every weekend, deleted them quietly. And a friend I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a text that simply read, "You should have done this a long time ago. Proud of you." I didn't reply to most of them, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need validation anymore. This wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing myself clearly. A few days later, I checked Lindsay's Facebook. The post where she implied I was abandoning our elderly mother was gone. No explanation. Just vanished. I noticed that Marcia hadn't been tagged in any recent family brunch photos either. In fact, her presence online seemed to dissolve. No comments, no check-ins, no birthday wishes from the extended clan. Then came the letter. It was from a law office across town, hand-signed by a junior associate I'd never met. He wrote, "I recently reviewed documentation naming me as counsel in a matter involving a psychological evaluation request. Upon review, it's clear my name and position were used without full disclosure of intent. I sincerely apologize for any role I may have played, even unknowingly, in a process that sought to circumvent your rights. Please know that I have withdrawn from representing the parties involved and have reported the incident to my supervising partner." The stamp, the language, the timing, none of it felt performative. It felt real. And more than that, it felt like confirmation. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. My mother had orchestrated a campaign to have me declared mentally unfit so she could take my house. And now, people knew. Not because I screamed, not because I broke down, but because I sent them the mirror and let them watch the reflection form on their own. The truth had always been there. I just stopped trying to protect them from it. Chapter 9. Grace brought cookies, wiped the table, and said, "How about something simple for dinner?" It was raining lightly when Grace showed up at my door. No warning, no dramatic entry, just her, standing there with a paper bag of homemade cookies and that familiar quietness in her eyes. We hadn't seen each other in years. I expected awkward small talk or maybe some too careful questions, but instead, she stepped inside, looked around, and said, "You've always had the best light in this kitchen." She didn't mention the lawsuit. She didn't ask about my mother. She didn't touch the elephant in the room, even with a fingertip. She just walked over to the counter, wiped it clean with a towel from her bag, rolled up her sleeves, and started pulling flour and sugar from my pantry like it was 2011, and we were cramming for finals with cookie dough and heartbreak playlists. "What do you think? Something simple for dinner?" she asked. It wasn't an offer of comfort. It wasn't pity. It was just presence. And that made all the difference. We didn't talk much as we baked. She cracked eggs with one hand, and I measured brown sugar like muscle memory. We laughed at how my oven still heated unevenly, and how we used to rotate trays like clockwork so nothing burned. I felt my shoulders lower, my breath deepen. The kitchen, my kitchen, felt like mine again. Not haunted, not infiltrated. Just home. After dinner, Grace noticed the empty space on the wall where my father's photo used to hang. I hadn't realized how long it had been down, tucked away after one too many nights of staring at it while feeling like I had somehow failed him. Quietly, I pulled the frame from a drawer, dusted the glass, and hung it back up. Something about that act felt like a reset. Not a declaration, just a reclamation. Later that night, Grace found an old notebook on the shelf and flipped it open, revealing a page I'd written nearly a decade ago. The handwriting was uneven, the ink smudged. It read, "Sometimes I feel like a guest in my own house, like I have to ask for permission just to be." She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She just handed it to me with a look that said, "I see you. I always have." As we washed the last of the dishes, she leaned against the counter and asked casually, "Hey, do you still have that old set of keys?" I paused, looked at her, and then laughed. Genuinely laughed. "I changed the locks," I said, "but that's okay. The door doesn't stay closed out of fear anymore. It wasn't about who had the keys. It was about who I chose to let in, and why." Chapter 10. Mom sent an email. "If you're calm enough, I'd like to talk." The weeks after the filing moved quietly. No more threats, no more drama, just the natural stillness that follows a storm. My work began to steady again. A few clients who had pulled back reached out to reschedule. Some of them even apologized for their silence. One of them wrote, "Now that we know the full story, we'd be honored to work with you again." I didn't broadcast anything. I let the truth do what it does best, settle into the cracks and reshape what was broken. And somewhere in that silence, I found something I hadn't realized I was missing. Peace. I decided to host something called Brunch for Strangers. No RSVP, no qualifications. Just an open door on Sunday mornings for anyone who didn't have family to go home to, or didn't want to. I set the table with mismatched mugs and passed around cinnamon bread and strawberry jam. No speeches, no introductions, just food and air and time. One older man sat quietly in the corner, savoring every bite like it was his first real meal in weeks. A young woman came with a guitar strapped to her back and played a few soft tunes by the window. Someone whispered over coffee, "This is the first breakfast I've had in years where I didn't have to pretend I was okay." I didn't tell them my story. I just kept the coffee flowing, smiled, and listened. And that was enough. One night, after I had cleaned up from a particularly busy brunch, I opened my inbox and saw it. Subject: "When you're ready." The message was simple. "If you feel calm enough, I'd like to call and talk." It was from her, Marcia. I didn't delete it. But I didn't respond either. Grace was staying over that weekend. She saw me rereading the email and didn't ask what it said. Instead, she poured us both a glass of wine, sat across from me, and after a while, asked softly, "Do you think, one day, you might open that door again?" I stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then I looked at her and said, "I didn't close it. I just changed the handle. Now it only opens from the inside." And that was the difference. Not in what was locked, but in who held the right to open it. Sometimes the hardest doors to close are the ones we've kept open for too long, hoping, waiting, hurting. But peace doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from choosing yourself. Choosing stillness over chaos, truth over appearance, and healing over pleasing. If this story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know.